Welcome to RecLess, a podcast making people smarter and more knowledgeable about parks and recreation. Your hosts are Shane Mize, Jay Tryon, and Tom Venniro, three career-long friends from around the country, bringing their own unique and sometimes entertaining perspectives with a surprise guest each episode. This is RecLess.
Good afternoon, guys, and welcome to the 8th episode of RecLess on our journey to bring some more knowledge to our listeners in the world of parks and recreation. We just launched, so it actually feels like I'm speaking to listeners now. Before, it just felt like we were just having fun conversations, but yeah,
the good old days.
Yes, the good old days. Now, I can't, apparently we're big time, or at least Jay is.
It depends who you ask.
So we launched. We went live with our first 3 episodes. Really great feedback so far, and I think today is going to continue on that trend. We got a special edition for a few reasons. So obviously our listeners can't see us, but I'm wearing some gear today, right? So Jay just shook his head, but I got my Patriots hat on. It is opening football Sunday for the NFL. So we talked a little bit in an episode a few episodes ago, I'm not sure which one, about our family fantasy football league, right? With some people from around the country. So I'm pumped. Football's awesome. This Thursday did not disappoint unless you were a Chiefs fan, right? But it was a great game. And so now we got the full slate of NFL games, which is going to conclude with Jay's Buffalo Bills. What are we, 7 of 8 now for Bills mentions?
You missed it last pod.
I think we missed one. Yeah. So
we did miss one. And as much as Tom didn't want to talk about the Bills, he's the one that's bringing them up more than half the time. So it's his fault.
Insecurity.
I want to bring a smile to Jay's face. That's it. It's very simple.
That'll do it.
So, all right. So my question today, or our little opening conversation, is going to be simple. We could have talked fantasy. We could have talked a bunch of different directions, but I want to go kind of sports radio show and ask you guys right now, considering Thursday and going into this week, the 30 minutes of the 1:00 games that are already set. I don't really know what's going on. This is a little unique. I'd usually be watching these games, but I have no idea. Who are your Super Bowl picks?
Oh, man.
Who wants to go first?
I'll go Seattle and the Jets.
All right.
I wonder why he's doing that.
It's funny. I don't watch any of the football. I watch Seattle. Sometimes I'll put it in the background. I did not watch Thursday night. I know my fantasy football output reflects that I don't watch any of these other games or don't know who anyone other than Seattle is or who they play. Oklahoma Sooners won yesterday. Tottenham's looking great. I can watch soccer all day, but football, I just watch the teams I support, and the rest of it's just noise or whatever. So we're watching Hard Knocks, and we've been enjoying that. And I'm a Seattle fan, and they play in different conferences, so I got lucky. So I'm going to say Seattle and the New York Jets, 77-0.
Who's winning?
The Jets, probably, if my fandom lines up with how it always has.
All right, so you heard it here. Jets are winning the Super Bowl, according to Shane, over
by 77 points.
Yes, over the unlikely Seattle Seahawks. All right, Jay. So what do you got?
I'm going to cop out and actually really not answer the question, because I am A, superstitious in some regards when it comes to sports, and B, I'm not a homer when it comes to just like, oh, my team is the best team in the world, they're going to win it all. I don't like talking like that. I don't like doubting that. I don't like doing anything that involves, I don't even bet on the Bills ever, just because I just don't want to put my heart into it. I think the AFC is stacked. I think it's going to be really challenging for whoever comes out of the NFC. Literally between the Bills, the Jets, Dolphins, the Chiefs, the Chargers. I mean, there's probably 6 teams, the Bengals, that, are very likely to make a run. It all depends, in my opinion, who stays healthy, because we've seen that, how, you lose a guy or two and it can just completely dictate how they can run the ball or throw the ball or anything. So I think the AFC is wide open with those 6 or 7 teams. NFC is definitely a little smaller. I think it's really coming down to probably Dallas or San Francisco, in my opinion.
Seattle, maybe.
Seattle looks good. They look good last year. We'll see what they do this year. But it's definitely more open for the NFC. So that's not probably the answer you wanted to hear, but that is what I'm sticking with. I'm just happy football's here. Football is everyone knows I love the Bills, but it's more than just the Bills to me. It's family. Like, I probably talk to my brothers and my dad more than 5 times a week than I do during off season, which sounds weird, but like, I have 2 brothers that have kids that play football. So we're texting throughout the week about how their kids are doing, and they're asking me how Noah's doing. And then I'm talking to my dad all week about football. So we just, everything just comes together and clicks so more often during football season. And, it's literally, I'm on a text chain with my brothers that Friday night, his kids have games. Saturday, my kid has a game, and my other brother's kids have games. Sunday, we talk about the Bills. And so it brings us together. And that's one of the reasons why I love it so much.
Now, I know that Tom's wife, Melissa, at least seems to support Tom's team, or just at least Tom being happy at the end of the weekend. Does Lindsay track on this at all? Does she not care if the Bills have a good weekend or a bad? No, okay.
I mean, she wants them to win because she knows how it impacts my mood.
Right. So yeah, that's the way it is.
She's not necessarily watching all the games with me, but she's definitely rooting for them.
Okay.
And it's not just me. It's obviously like Noah too. Like, Noah's gotten into it. He loves it. I'm coming home next weekend for the home opener. Noah's coming with me. He's jacked up about it. So she knows that it can alter the mood in the household if there's a rough game.
For sure.
Yeah. Melissa went full board Patriot fan when we met. And so I couldn't, obviously couldn't ask for anything more, because when you're in this area, you typically hate the Patriots, right? So you're a Bills fan and you hate the Patriots. So she's taken it even a whole level farther, where she now has brought that love and turned it into hatred for all of the other teams in the division. So so when the Bills fans are out there, I don't know, she sees the colors and makes her sick, Jay. I don't know if that's a common thing, but in these areas or these parts, I know I could speak to where Jay's coming from. When the Bills lose in this area, Buffalo, Rochester, it's like doom and gloom around here. People are miserable. Like, you almost want them to win, just because either that Monday or whatever day it is after a game, people are going to be pretty, they're not going to be in a good spot. When they win, totally different place.
Interesting, because it's like, growing up in Buffalo, living there for 20 plus years, the city's changed a lot. I love going back home now. They really revitalized the city, the waterfront. There's a lot to do. But really, growing up, it was a lot different than that. There wasn't as much infrastructure in place. There wasn't as much entertainment and attractions. So really, football and hockey is what you had. So it was like, that's all you're known for. You just the hardworking city, and just like, you love your sports. And that's just, people live and breathe it, and that's what you look forward to when it comes to Sunday or Monday Night Football, whatever day of the week they're playing.
Absolutely. It's a great city. There's not many, obviously I can't speak to every city, but there's not many cities that I can imagine are as passionate as the Buffalo Bills fans and those in the surrounding areas. So typical Jay answer, maybe a typical Shane answer too. So Jay didn't give an answer, right? That's I feel like that's some discernment right there, and he discerned his way out of an actual answer. Shane pretty much just gave us a ridiculous answer. So I'm just going to take a shot out there. I think it is the year of the big cat. So I think the Bengals are going to take it. So the Tigers, the Bengals, right? That's why I said big cat. So the year of the big cat, the Bengals are going to take it, and they're going to meet a surprise pick. I believe the Lions, and I know this seems like a reactionary pick based on what I saw, or we all saw Thursday, but I don't know. I think I saw some things from the Lions last year that showed that they're on the up and up. And Jay, you said it. It seems like a lot of these divisions are wide open anyway.
Yeah.
Aaron Rodgers is gone, so you don't have that challenge or hurdle for the Lions to compete with. So yeah, that's my pick. Lions versus Bengals. Bengals win. We'll say 36-21.
I can get behind that. I can see the Lions really making a run. Their coach, they got a whole new, just their culture behind that coach has been incredible. They got more talent. They had a great draft this year. So who knows, man? That division's wide open.
So I love that you said what you said, culture. So we're going to move on over to what people are here for, to hear about our guest. And so as I kind of give you some of our hints and clues, we got Jay, Tryon, and Shane Mize with me as always. Our guest is a former NRPA Board of Directors member. Our guest has been asked to be on this show by at least one of you, one other
Yeah, I know who this
of our
is.
hosts. Oh, you already know.
Yeah.
Okay. All right. Well, play along with me. The guest comes with a non-typical, non-traditional Parks and Rec background. You still think you're on the right track, Shane?
Yeah, I drove this guest around, and someone in my, you want to talk about knowing how big of an impact you have in the industry. I helped start the Young Professional Network. I was in the state of Texas, which for those that don't know, I have worked in my whole life. And I drove this guest around for a state conference, and someone asked me if I was his driver. So
Okay.
if you want to measure impact, if you want to measure impact in an industry, I'm killing it.
I think that means every time there's a conference, you need to be the driver and just stick with it.
Yeah. Didn't even know I worked in the industry. Just thought I was the professional driver of this guest.
That's awesome.
So I could totally see that with who our guest is. But Shane, you have, not to go off topic, Shane, you've picked me up at the airport several times, I believe, just because you're a really great guy and I appreciate it.
Sure.
Can you hold up a sign next time with my name on it?
Yeah.
Just to make me feel a little more important.
Yeah, absolutely. You won't like the name I call you, but I'll hold a sign up for sure.
All right, we'll forget that then. All right, let me keep going for our audience. Just a few more. Impressively, and again, a lot of what the guest has done is very innovative and impressive as it is. Been a part of an NBA All-Star game and the NCAA basketball tournament. A TEDx College Park curator, absolute annual favorite NRPA conference speaker. And when I say that, we talked about this already when we talked about our tips and trips for conference. Do not show up to this speaker session late. And by that, I mean, show up as early as they open those doors, because you will not get in if that's not the case. And we have a multiple state association keynote. Maybe, I don't know. I don't have a tally, but it could be all 50 states at this point for all I know. Lastly, I'll just introduce where our keynoter is in their career right now. And that is currently on an entrepreneurial journey with Next Practice Partners. Please welcome Neelay Bhatt.
What's up, buddy?
What's up, boys?
Got his Colts gear on.
In typical Patriots fan fashion, he had to schedule this right as my Colts were kicking off. Jackasses.
Think about that, because I was like, you know what, Neelay's due to be on this show, and then I'm like, well, the Colts are playing at 1. It's probably not him today.
I like how he said
I love
earlier.
you guys, man. Look at my sacrifice for y'all.
I like how Tom said earlier that people hate the Patriots in Buffalo. No, people hate the Patriots everywhere.
True.
It's true.
I've never sniffed the air of Buffalo, and I freaking hate the Patriots too. So it has nothing to do with Buffalo.
You know, that may be true, but if you're all free around 3:45, 4 o'clock, Tom Brady's retirement ceremony with the New England Patriots is going to be on national television. So I mean, you got to appreciate a little bit of greatness, right?
Mark that under who gives a shit.
So we should have booked this start at 3:45.
Oh yeah.
Well, we'll just speak for the next 3 hours, man.
Yeah, let's drag this out.
All right, so let's segue off of football. Actually, no, I did talk with Neelay before. Neelay, Super Bowl picks before we get into it.
Well, I'm on my 6th. The Colts are on our 6th quarterback in 6 years. So we're not getting anywhere remotely close to this. Although as we speak, I got my second screen on just for the score. We scored a touchdown right now, man.
Oh! Live touchdown on the pod. That's rare for us.
7-7 right now against the Jags. Rookie QB's first touchdown.
Nice.
But it's not going to be the Colts. Just to jinx Jay, I'm going to go with the Bills.
Love it.
Who were either the Eagles or the 49ers.
That's a pretty fair pick.
Hey, and Neelay, just if it'll make you feel better, after the Bills lost Jim Kelly, we were on like 20 quarterbacks over about 15 years. So I feel the pain of changing quarterbacks every either season or half a season.
That quarterback in Indy looks good, though.
So far, if we can keep him healthy, unlike Andrew Luck.
So I think we could talk about football for a while. So let's get into the nuts and bolts here. I want to start and kick us off by talking about Neelay from a personal perspective and tell a little story about that. So it's the story of meeting Neelay. So it was back in 2012, back in Anaheim, NRPA conference. So Neelay was there presenting a session that was, let's see, and Neelay, I should know the actual title, but it was basically
With Lindsay?
No. This was a culture and brand excellence from the perspective of Disney. So obviously, we were in Anaheim, so Disneyland's there. For those of you who don't know, Neelay comes with background working with Disney, and I'll let him talk to that in a few moments. But I wasn't a big Disney person at that time, but now, as many
No one
of you
believes
know,
that. No one
well,
believes that. Your Mickey Mouse was at full attention when you read that.
Ah, man. All right. So I met Neelay, and then I met Melissa, very, very close to one another. And that's when it all clicked for me. Right. And really started with Neelay trying to, I don't know if this was the intent, Neelay. I think it was, but in that session, he pointed out all of what Disney does that I don't think the layperson would say, yeah, that makes a whole lot of sense. And then when I started going to the parks, I would notice these things. And truly what Neelay mentioned resonated with me, and how they do business and how they get you coming back for more. And it's clearly worked with me, maybe to an excessive extent, but that session was super powerful for me. And I took a chance, went up to the podium after this session, and I went and introduced myself to Neelay. We have been friends ever since. When we made contact, we exchanged numbers, we exchanged cards, whatever it was at the time. And it just, that communication and friendship grew from there. And I've done and had been fortunate enough to been on a journey with Neelay and get to watch him from afar. But he's helped me in so many ways. He's come to our state conference. And so Neelay is exactly what I explained in there. But to sum it up, he's the kind of guy who really goes out of his way to make people feel great. And that customer experience, but he does that. He takes that to every level with his personal life, his friendship. And I'm inspired always by that, Neelay. So I just wanted to give people a little anecdote of how we met, and then give you the opportunity to tell people, we talked about that non-traditional background in PR. How did you get into the field? How did you start and then ultimately end up where you are today?
Yeah, thanks, man. Leslie, again, thanks for having me. It's ironic. Shane was trying to needle me and text me and say, am I going to see you tomorrow? And I'm pretending like, what's tomorrow? He's like, oh, football.
He did a good job. I actually thought it was going to be Neelay until the text yesterday, and I was like, okay, it's not him. I got to figure out somebody else.
Yeah. And then Jay was setting up a time at NRPA to do the recording, and I was playing along as well. So thank you all. This seems awesome. I love what you all have started as well. As I would say, it's a true next practice. So kudos to you all for our field. I remember vividly, Tom, as well, us meeting in Anaheim. That was the first time I presented with my mentor from Disney, this guy called Alex Vergara. And I know you talked about mentorship as well in the previous podcast too. But all of us have been on both sides of that. And that early on, presenting with a mentor was life-changing and affirming, right? It was validation when you have somebody who believes in you at a time when you didn't believe in yourself. And he was one of those early people. And I remember you talking to you, and somehow, and I'm not sure how the conversation happened, but I remember thinking, I really like this guy. And he's a Patriots fan. And
well, he was wearing the mouse ears, I'm sure. That's probably what.
And I said, this might be the only Patriots fan in my life that I actually really do like. So you have single-handedly, in my mind, changed the opinion of Patriots fans just a little bit and I say just a little bit, right? So don't deflate me here, Tom.
You know what? I appreciate that.
Well
and to the point where Neelay has, so he doesn't, it's not just that has a little bit more appreciation. He still puts those jabs in all the time that I'm a Patriots fan. So I've been to so many of your sessions at this point because in addition to being a friend, I'm a fan, but he will put in his sessions pictures of maybe Tom Brady in one of his maybe not so successful moments, and be kind enough to pick me out in a crowd and let everybody know that I'm a fan. So I do appreciate it.
There you go, man. There you go. So yeah, man, and you all know this as well, but I grew up in India, went to school there, played some sports growing up, got into engineering actually, because generally if you're academically somewhat decent, when we were growing up, that's what a lot of people did. It was doctors, engineers, or family business. And we had a family business of minerals, chemicals, engineering, all that stuff. So in my head, that was the default route I was going to take. And I'm an only child. Parents didn't want to make a mistake again.
Hmm.
So this was it. But so I felt that almost this path was ready in my mind, right? That's what I'm going to do. And I got into engineering and I absolutely hated it, man. I dropped out of school. And you don't do that where I grew up, as in the Indian community in general and all the rest. Academia is really very, very heavily prioritized. To my parents' eternal credit, they supported me and unconditionally to this day have always, my mom's alive still, did that. But along the way, Steve Jobs always talked of the dots connecting backwards. I failed 7 out of 8 subjects in engineering, but I topped one, and that was business communication. And who knew as an 18-year-old then where life takes you, right? To then dropping out, coming back into undergrad in psychology because I gravitated towards people. That's the piece I've always enjoyed. Started my first company, which was a library when I was 10. I had a typewriter and I was typing up all the names and 25 cents, giving books out to people and all that. And then had another ad agency when I was 19, did that for a few years with some friends, did one master's in advertising and PR. And then at the time I knew I didn't want to get into the family business. So back then there really wasn't, from the business standpoint or education 20 plus years ago, as much of an opportunity. So just as a default, I was looking to the US, still one of the best academic systems, opportunities, all the rest. And by accident came upon this field that said sports management. I didn't even know that existed, right? This is again 2002, that one could actually study something in sports, because in India, it was either cricket or pretty much nothing. And so that led me to go from Bombay to Athens, Ohio, which was Ohio University is the first ever sports management program. It's the top ranked in the world, all sorts of cool things. And I went from 20 million people to 20,000 people, where there were maybe 200 people that looked like me, but 199 of them were into engineering or computers. And that was me, right? So that was a really hard time, to be honest, in those early days, not having anyone to talk to, not having anyone from my background who could understand what it took to get into the space. And from there, on a whim, applied, got in, went from Athens, Ohio to Athens, Greece, worked for the Olympics, and I lived in Greece as well for a while, and the Paralympics. And then someone I met there, again, how many dots connecting in so many ways. His name's Dale Newberger. He and I met through an event I volunteered at a while back, and he was the assistant chef de mission of the US Olympic team. Connected with him there, stayed in touch. When I was working for Disney at the Wide World of Sports in Orlando, he reached out to recruit me to come work for a company he had just joined in Indianapolis, which was Pros Consulting. And Pros happened to be doing at the time a lot of work with the US Olympic Committee and their national governing bodies. So with my background being sports, that really was the piece that attracted me to that. Indy has such an outstanding reputation for sports, right? You think of the Indy 500 and the Speedway, the NCAA, USA Track and Field, Gymnastics, the Indiana Sports Corp, NBA Pacers, Colts, all that. So the reputation for sports is really what got me to the city first. And then I got into it and I realized how much work we did with Parks and Recreation. And I didn't know Leon at the time, but Leon Younger is one of the legends in the field. Early on as well, one of the first people from a director to consulting and all the rest. And so that's a long sort of way to tell you the background and how things came about with people I knew and, falling into it. And then over the years, it's been people, right? We've all talked about this so many times. The idea that this field is so much more about meaning than money, and sort of mission and impact, that you can see the tangible difference in people's lives. We're not selling widgets, we're transforming generations. So that's what's kept me in there. 16 years with Pros. And then last year, as you all know, the leap of faith that's got me here. So yeah, man, here I am. I'm never leaving the field. And I'm never going to stop heckling you if you come to my sessions.
That's all right. We're not letting you go.
So is it Nelly? How do you say the name? Is it It's Neelay, right?
So funny you say that because, and you know this, my boss at Disney, despite all of us having name tags, always the same guy, Alex, called me Nelly. I have a voicemail from him from yesterday. He called to congratulate for the first anniversary, and he still leaves a voicemail saying, "Hey, Nelly, congrats on your first anniversary," and it goes on. So
love it.
It's become a running joke, but yep, there it is.
So Neelay and I, people don't know this, and we didn't know each other at the time, but we were able to trace ourselves back like ancestry style almost. He was on that Athens University campus, or Ohio University campus in Athens, Ohio, and I was there for a conference, and I was in sports management. I was in my master's program at Western Illinois. We had gone to Ohio University for a 3-day. It was the coldest 3 days I've ever been my whole life. It was January in Ohio, and it reaffirmed my belief that I needed to graduate and move back to Texas. But Neelay and I were actually walking around that same campus at one time, which is small
That's
world
funny.
in some ways. So my question, Neelay, you obviously are a world-class consultant and have a lot of credentials in our industry, a lot of fans. So I want to ask you more of a hypothetical question. Let's say consulting isn't allowed anymore and you had to go into our field. You have obviously worked with small firms, large firms. You've worked with directors, assistant directors, public engagement officers, communications department. Let's say consulting wasn't an option anymore and you had to go into our field. What type of job would be something that would actually appeal to you, and what size agency would be most appealing to you?
That's a great question, man. No one's ever asked me this. All your wonder and everything else coming forward here, right?
That'll do it.
I would say probably larger urban systems. Just with my background coming from a large urban system, the diversity, I naturally gravitate towards that as well.
Sure.
And it'll be in a role where I can help either be this combination of a chief culture and innovation officer.
So
right?
you would have to be the director potentially.
No.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's where you can help one on the people side from an inclusion lens and on the culture side from an innovation lens.
And let me follow up, one more follow-up question with that. So Indy also isn't an option. Let's say, I know that's inconceivable. It's without fathom. It is unfathomable that you would move away. But if you did, if you had to live somewhere else, you've traveled all over the country.
Yeah.
What part of the world really appeals to you as a area that you could be a Parks and Rec person that maybe would raise your family in? What other part of the, I guess it doesn't have to be the United States, could be anywhere, but I'm potentially interested in the United States.
Yeah, I was going to follow up and ask you that when you said what part of the world, did you mean the US?
You can do both. I would love to hear where you would live in the United States in the 50, but I'd also love to hear, like, if you were going to do something where you lived outside of the country, what part of the world appealed to you and why?
In the US, it'll be San Diego. Absolutely love the vibe. Family loves it. A lot of work related and family travel's been there. So 100% I'd be somewhere in that space as well.
I thought it'd be Pflugerville, so I was a little off. My bad.
If I could spell Pflugerville correctly, then I might consider moving there.
Yeah.
So it would definitely be San Diego area in general. And if I were looking around the world, will probably be New Zealand. We've been to Australia, New Zealand, both. New Zealand makes the Aussies seem very stuffy, and the Aussies are such laid-back people, right? But just the welcoming spirit, the sense of adventure. Auckland was outstanding. The South Island was also wonderful. There's something about it of how they've retained the Maori culture. They've remembered their roots, but they've also moved and progressed along as well. So they value the outdoors, they value adventure and recreation, but most of all, they value people, and I've really liked that.
Awesome.
So Neelay, when you were talking about your background, you mentioned it's all about the people. And just like Tom, I've been to a lot of your sessions, as has everyone that's ever been to a conference that you're at, whether you're a keynote, whether you're doing multiple sessions, everyone is flocking to your sessions. And I think one of the main reasons why is you have the ability as a speaker to make everyone in the audience feel like you're talking directly to them. And I've felt it myself. I've had conversations with other folks about that. And I don't know how you do it. And I don't know if there is like, the intent of your speech is around something like that. But is there something that you focus on when you're leading a session or giving a speech at whether it's a conference or whether it's a keynote, whether you're meeting with the department, going over a master plan? I always felt like everyone in the room feels like they're really important and you're talking to them. And I don't know if there's anything you can kind of like give on, how that has come to be in your repertoire of tactics when you look at a session.
That's a good one too. There's a quote I really liked, which has stuck with me, is that a great manager makes you feel that they are important. A great leader makes you feel like you are important, right? And I've been around a lot of people when I couldn't do anything for them who've gone out of their way to make me feel important, right? Dale Newberger, Alex, others, so many of the folks in the field as well. And I think that's been what stuck with me, Jay, as we talk to these sessions or otherwise. Preparation is key, no matter where you're presenting. We've talked in the TEDx world as well, among others. That's something that I spend a lot of time on, being in the sessions, visualizing ahead of time, or knowing the audience if I'm coming to you or if I'm coming to Texas or going to Tom where he was. And then I think it's just because I actually like you people, right? It's I have never talked about somebody that I don't know or don't like. It's consistent. There is something about the fact that you are people I would care about whether I ever was a consultant or not. And I remember, Jay, you and I talked in your early Mecklenburg days before you left to launch the entire Indian Trail team. And then we've shared our journey from the time our kids are literally weeks apart, Kiana and Noah, and we've shared, right? So it makes it so much easier to talk about it because you're not a statistic for me. You're a friend I'm going to have for the rest of my life. And so much so that now my son knows when we do the fantasy football drafts, he knows I'm going to take your quarterback every single time. And he knows that Tom's team, and he was young, so I didn't want to have him say the word shit. I would have him say Tom's team is the poopy team. And so he still knows that as well when we draft for you guys. So it's different.
That's
right?
awesome.
It's those personal connections that now have become, talked about this with Katie Keller as well in the session, in your podcast. It's personal, it's relationships. And that's what makes it easier in the sessions for me to do that.
Well, like I said, I've had that conversation with a lot, and I feel like everyone, even if they're meeting you for the first time, they feel that personal connection. You do a really good. I think that's why your sessions are so busy. One of the reasons, and why you're so valuable to our profession.
Thank you, man.
So let's carry on with that because your sessions, they speak to me. They speak to everybody. That's what part of what makes you an extremely special individual, but also a presenter. And so we've got the NRPA conference coming up. We've talked about that for the last few episodes in different contexts. And we're going to launch this episode here with you prior to the conference. So just for your knowledge and all of the listeners out there, you should be hearing this just before conference. Tell us what are you going to speak about at conference this year? What are some of the topics? If you wouldn't mind giving us a sneak preview, this will only make it harder to get in the room. But yeah, tell us about what you're going to be educating our field on.
2 sessions this year. Both of them were ones we started last year and have built upon. One of them is with my brother from another mother as well, Jason Elsaldi. Right, Jason and I started Next Practice Partners last year. He probably, as you know, Tom, rivals you as a Disney fan. So he's been there more than he can probably count at this point. But we thought of this idea last year in terms of the overall learnings from Disney. I've been on the other side as a cast member, but he's been there as a fan. And so collectively, as we were thinking of it, we've probably spent maybe 10,000 hours at Disney. And the whole 10,000 hour thing of how much you can learn from some of those pieces. And so we built that session called, again, just, building this culture of magical guest experiences, right? Things we learned from 10,000 hours at Disney. And I'm seeing the evolution, even from my time there to now, of how much more intentional they've become about inclusion. I've seen mannequins now wearing hearing aids, mannequins in wheelchairs, princesses. Disney's weaving AI into what they're doing now as well, the metaverse, right? So there's all of those aspects of innovation, inclusion, etc. And ultimately, it's about how they make people feel, right? Everybody feels like a prince or a princess. And I found that those skills ultimately are the most transferable to our work, because we frankly interact with far more people in Parks and Rec than Disney ever will, right? It's a daily thing versus a once a year or once in a while. And so what is it that everybody everywhere can do to make people feel special, to make them feel welcome, to make them feel like they belong, right? That's a big part of that first session that we want to continue sort of building upon. And the other came about probably from one of the hardest moments of my life in this country, and you all three were there at the time, you remember this, is after January 6th. And we talked about how we said, if the people on the Hill that day looked like me, they would not be alive. And y'all are the only group of people I would have felt comfortable sharing this with, right? It just felt really hard. But it got to the point to say, that's such an uncomfortable conversation and such a needed one, but we rarely have it. You talked with Katie Keller on the We Part stuff as well, and how, women, and they have some of the conversations they had, etc. But as a field, we don't create too many more safe spaces for that. And that led to the session we did last year with Mikey Biedenstein and, Dr. Tiffany Johnson, called Uncomfortable Conversations with Black, White, and Brown Professionals. We got into white privilege. Shane, I know you've been one of the first people acknowledging how hard your life has been. And I know that. And at the same time, there's still privilege that comes simply from the way you look, right?
Sure. I look like someone who stormed the Capitol.
Well,
literally right now, backwards hat, scruffy beard, red face.
Sure. Yeah. Right. And as a guy, I still feel I have privilege that women don't, right? So there's layers of privilege that we all have as well, that we talked about. We talked about LGBTQIA plus and gender identity. I talked about from an immigration standpoint, calling people citizens versus residents, right? What that creates as a sense too. And it deeply impacted us. It seemed to resonate with the audience. We've done it in a few other states since. And in each place, we brought in different folks along to have people from that space doing it. So we're coming back for a second one this time, even more diverse panel if we could. We have DeQuell Robinson coming from Alabama. We have Barbie Hernandez coming from Doral. And then we have Tiff Cunin, who's actually with NRPA. And the complexity of all of those, Barbie is the youngest city manager in the city's history, in her late 30s, was a former director of Miami Parks and Rec. She's, Latina, Cuban as well, and Syrian heritage too. And as she would say, she's vertically challenged, right? She's a shorter woman looking to make an impact. DeQuell, an African-American male, happens to be one of the best wheelchair basketball players out there, right? And he's working in the field while also doing a bunch of other things outside academically and professionally. And what a lens that brings to the conversation. And then Tiff goes by they, them. And they will be part of the conversation as well as we explore gender and gender identity, etc. And again, the same hat that I wear as a brown Asian immigrant. And so having these perspectives, talking about things that we don't agree with, normalizing, saying things like we're just doing right now is really hard. And we would love to have every agency in the country feel comfortable, create spaces. You three are leaders, you all are directors, you've done this yourself, and I know you've done it. But how can we create this as an industry where everyone, despite the backgrounds and the differences, feels safe to have these tough conversations? So those are the two we have this year.
I love how you're always pushing us as an industry, because we can get blinders on in a lot of ways due to privilege and due to good intentions. You can just be hyper focused on what your department does or what's happening in your part of the world. And you're not trying to not think, you're not trying to not look up. You're in the rabbit hole. You're 40, 50. I mean, we rarely do, I think any of us work 40 hours a week. Feels like we're all there more. And so, that for me, that wonder time, that time to look up and see what the industry is doing, how we're having an impact, who we are and aren't engaging or leaving off in some capacity. It's always not bad intentions. It's just, I'm continually trying to get my staff to continue to use the word intention and curate, that we're intentional with the events we do and that we curate the experiences people experience at our events. But man, even our master plan, we did a master plan. I thought we did a really, in Pflugerville, I thought we did a real world-class level of public engagement. I thought, I had this think tank idea, and I honestly thought going through the process that we might not even need it because we'd gotten 30,000 people in a town of 70,000 to engage us. And then the think tank just floored me, like chopped me off at the knees. There were still so many things in our pursuit of a world-class public engagement that we thought we were doing everything. The think tank still said, hey, you had blinders on. You missed this, this, and this. And I was like, holy shit. Like, good grief. You can't, even when you're trying the best to have this wide view, you're not trying to look, tall at all. You're trying to look as wide as possible.
Yeah.
You still miss stuff. It's incredible. We had Ryan Hagerness on a couple pods ago, maybe the last pod. No, a couple pods ago. And he talked about AI. And I think he's probably the leading person to talk about that. But I think that your how you experience next practices and how the plug there and how you experience how people interact with those next practices. I would love to hear your opinion on AI as well. The more I think about it, the more I think there are so many things, like we're just scratching the surface. I was talking to my wife. She does a grocery list, something as easy to think of as just a grocery list. And I thought, man, if grocery stores were allowing AI into their app and you're able to load an app, and if you're able to say one time, this is what it takes for me to make a yellow cake, the next time all you have to do is say add yellow cake to the mix or to the list, and the 12 ingredients are there. If they start to know your list every month, they could say, you order 4 gallons of milk, or 5 gallons of milk every week, and you order, 10 steaks every week. These are things that auto-populate in your list every time. And, it's 100 degrees next week. You like this popsicles when it's 100 degrees, but when it's 30 degrees, you order a lot more chili. It'll start to make but we're not doing that at all in our industry. And I don't know if it's because we, as the agencies, don't have the ability to build those functions, or we're not yet to the point where we can build those functions well enough to be able to roll that out. But I know that you've got some AI ideas, and I would love to hear how you think our industry is going to use it currently, and maybe even how we should be looking to use it much further down the road.
So clearly Shane was listening to our pre-podcast conversation.
Oh, is that what y'all talked about?
Yeah, I just don't trust Shane.
You should.
Yes. Oh man, where do we begin? So firstly, I think Ryan's awesome, man. I love the guy. Similarly, I think of him as a similar next practitioner, and always someone that I have presented with, respect the heck out of, and always sort of looking at moving things further as well, right? In addition to that, as we think AI, it's not even been a year now since ChatGPT was released. And frankly, for most people, that's been the whole conversation when everyone's suddenly now talking AI, right? The generative AI, the learning language models, all the rest as well. And for those of you listening, ChatGPT, if you haven't, it's a OpenAI is sort of the source for it. It's a AI bot, if you were a chat bot, that allows you to put in prompts and get a whole bunch of results, right? There's Llama out there, there's Bard, there's a whole bunch of other ones too. But if you step away from that and think over the period of time, we've been using AI for a long time, right? Your Netflix viewing is based on AI. People that watch this would also like this based on other people's viewing patterns. Our Amazon list, if you see the things at the bottom, people that buy this also buy these, or these 3 things frequently bought together. That one single function, by the way, is worth $50 billion a year to Amazon in business. So I've thought of this years ago as well, is we've sort of talked in this to say, what if we could apply that one singular function to our work? Currently, everyone's talking of simple things: write a job description, create a marketing collateral, find out 3 top priorities, and make a table of contents. Cool, all that's wonderful. But what if you could take my entire participation history that you already have and create people who participate in this would also like this. People that went to this program would also like that event. And imagine that for your 70,000 people in Pflugerville or your million plus people, Jay, in Mecklenburg, and say people that went to East Way for this would also like that at North Mech. And now scale that for all your future program ideas, for your marketing information, how you price it, and who you partner and organize that with. Then what you're getting to is the TikTok version of social media, where earlier Facebook and all the rest were telling you information from who you knew. TikTok changed the paradigm by telling you information based on what you liked.
Mm.
So imagine if we could give people programs information for what they liked, how that could completely radically change participation and thus over time advocacy, funding, all sorts of things. So that's just one of the things I think of as well. This is a much longer conversation. Jay, I don't know if you're trying to ask something as well. I have a couple of follow-ups, but I'll wait if you want to say something.
Well, I just want to add one thing to that. So like what you were just saying would do phenomenal things for our users. But then from the staff side, it's going to save our staff so much time.
Yeah.
Because right now, one thing that we do in Mecklenburg County is if I take all my summer camp participants, well, we have 15 school day outs coming up with CMS being out of school. So we will email individually all the families that did summer camp, say, hey, we know you did summer camp. Now do you need school day out days for us when there's no school in session? So it's the same concept, but we're doing it manually. So if there's an algorithm to do that and take that hours and hours off of our staff, because it's like we do it for all of our sports. If you played basketball last year, we're going to email you and say, hey, basketball season's coming up. Do you want to play basketball? But we look at all the similar programs for the age groups and demographics that we serve, and we're going to send these blast emails. But it takes our time to do that. All of our staff is spending hours of time. So not only would you have the impact for the user, but there's also the staff impact that doesn't get measured probably.
And if the AI could say, oh, hey, Jay, Noah is interested in basketball again this year, sign up, that's one thing. But if it can say, Noah looks like he was 8 and under last year, he'll be in the 10 and under this year. Here's the 10 and under sign up. 3 of Noah's teammates have already signed up for, Coach Neelay. I mean, how much easier is that for them? And much a no-brainer as a parent. Oh, well, all 3 kids have already signed up. It's the coach that we want. And we, AI might even, depending on what you put in the front end, know that Neelay practices Tuesday nights at, whatever rec center. And so you may just be like, all the things you'd have to research as a parent, or you'd have to develop and curate as a practitioner and provide, can, if we're doing it right, can be there. I just don't know how to do it yet.
So some of this is already out there. And Jay, so to add to that as well, if I knew a Noah Tryon is a fitness-focused family kid who does push-ups every time the Bills score, right? And is running 5Ks at basically age 10. He's a beast like his dad already is. Piper Tryon coming down the line may likely be inclined similarly, right? So what are the kinds of programs for that age that I could be recommending to somebody in the family?
Yeah.
So the philosophical shift is going from an AI to your AI. Ultimately, you put something in Google today, you get the general search, right? And it's the results, no matter who puts it in, you're getting initially the same information. But with AI, as it learns more on your behaviors, that's where the customization and the learning comes in to give you things you might want. And I saw this at TED this year, man, in Vancouver. This was the first year they had an all-out AI focus. And they had the Sam Altman, one of the founders of OpenAI as well. He was there too, talking about how they are building on this. They had Salman Khan, the guy who runs Khan Academy, talking of how they are using AI. And that's where the applications came in, where, Shane, to your point, if Hannah is looking to build something or bake something and maybe wean you off your 60 monsters a day or whatever you drink and get you healthy, there you go. Here's your monster. Right? It allows you to first say, I want to have 100 people coming home for a Texas-style barbecue. It creates your entire recipe list for all those people. It will then create a grocery list in a parallel app for you, have it delivered, and create an entire social media post that you can share the ingredients and the information all from within it. So right now, it's got a very singular use. You put in these prompts and it generates a bunch of things for you. But having it connect across different spaces, that was eye-opening for me. The other was with Khan Academy, talking of personal tutors. Imagine for your summer camps, man, or you've got kids that are coming in for before or after school. What if you could have AI help each kid learn the way and the pace at which they are comfortable learning? And being able to do that, because we know this, our staffing's never going to keep up. Automation and AI is here to stay, but how do we build those pieces? So I like these applications, but something I think, Tom, you would remember from our TEDx College Park event is we had Timnit Gebru, right? And she was the person researching bias in AI at Google. She's made big news. She actually was fired as well as a result of that too. If you look her up, you'll see some more. But that's the piece where I really still struggle with, because ultimately AI is input in, input out, right?
Right.
Shane.
That's the worry on my part, is that, so there was a comedian, he popped up on my feed the other day, Shane McGinnis, maybe he popped up because his name was Shane. I don't know. But he said something about his dad becoming a Republican. He didn't start off a Republican. He was really cool. And then he became a Republican dad because, life or whatever. But really what he's saying, without saying it, is at some point, he was only on Facebook, but he was only looking at the things he wanted to look at on Facebook. And he was on whatever news that he was in. We're not trying to get political here, but he was on a news station, but he was only listening to that news station. If he's going to Twitter, he's only following the people he's following. And so in an input-output system, how does AI ensure that we're not rabbiting hole more? Because it's only making it easier for me to make sure Noah Tryon is only playing with the 3 kids that he's already played with and is only going to Coach Neelay because it's easier, right? And how does it make sure Hannah's not trying a new spice, because we're only trying the spices we've always had, and we don't want those Middle Eastern spices hopping into our chili. This is a Texas chili. So how does it make us try? How does it prevent us from rabbling hole more and making us a less diverse society?
Yeah. Well, before I get to that, I'm going to digress for a minute. Speaking of spice, Jay texted me pictures from the Indian stores he goes to and says, this is the stuff that I'm getting for us right now.
Phone a friend? Is that what it is? It's like phone a friend?
It's funny. I am probably, Shane and I are complete opposite on so many levels. And one of them is food. Like Shane, everyone knows, anyone that knows Shane knows, he eats steak. That's it. I'm not a steak guy. Give me every international cuisine you can think of. My go-to is Thai food. I love Thai food. I love Vietnamese food. I like Indian food. I like everything that's, international based. So we go to different spice shops. We go to different Indian grocery stores, or every ethnic grocery store you can think of, I'm there. I was at my wife actually went to a Greek market last week to pick up Greek food for us. So
nice.
And it's then we're making the meal at home. We're not just buying at a restaurant. So it's I like the analogy that you're mentioning, because it is a fair point that if we are going to use AI to make our life easier from repetition, how are we going to then diverse ourselves into what else is out there?
Yeah. And this is where Tom and I, ironically, were talking about this before we got on, where we are going and speaking, and we're going to be talking to California Leadership Academy about this, and hopefully some other places, is this idea of DEAI. If you think of most people speaking today, they are in one or the other swim lane. Most people speak DEI, belonging, Jedi, you name it, or they're speaking AI. But I haven't still sort of come across that point in terms of how do we look at DEAI together, right? How do we marry inclusion and innovation together, right? 2 of these core values that I think, because ultimately, here's the thing with all the progress in AI, if we leave people behind, what's the point? And if we are extremely diverse, but we're still status quo and stuck to how we've done it, then what's the point? So it has to be, together and coexisting. So that's really the space we're looking in as well. I don't have a great answer for bias and AI, man. If I were, I would have probably retired by now too. And we all could have retired, had a fantasy football in Bahamas or wherever else, who knows? But I think that's really the key, is where we are pushing. And I would want everyone in the industry to be pushing towards is not just AI, but DE-AI.
Because at some point, the AI now has to do the thing that in my scenario, the spouse has to do. Like, hey, Shane, what about some fruit or vegetables? You know what I mean? And I'm like, no, steak and eggs. So it's like, at some point, the thing that's been created to make sure my life gets easier has to do the thing that whatever support system you previously had in your life was doing, right? Which is, maybe it's sending my steak stats to my doctor. My doctor reaches out through AI and says, you need to eat some fruit or vegetables. But it's very interesting. And, we make fun of the food thing, but knowing that there is a meeting around the corner that might be a super diverse meeting, and you should attend, not because you have an interest in that, but because everything in your AI is saying you don't have an interest in that. There's genius in that if we figure it out. There really is.
That's a lot like what we talked about with going to sessions too, right? So this could almost be looked at and used in maybe the professional development world, right? I'm sure it will be soon. And you go to a conference, and NRPA conference, obviously leading up to that, is their session list is one of the most overwhelming parts of the conference, right? You get on that app. I mean, correct me if I'm wrong, because I got two program committee guys here, but you're looking at upwards of 30, 40 in one time slot at times. Is that correct?
Yeah, depending on how many rooms that we have at any one time.
Yeah.
And all that changes at each conference. Sometimes you only have 15 or 20 rooms available, and sometimes you do have larger sections of rooms. And then you also have meetings, and you also have the exhibit hall, and then you also have the court podcast, and you've got some of these now sessions in the exhibit hall, which are like these innovation labs. And so there is a lot to choose from at any one time.
Yeah, so it goes back to what I think it was one of our guests that was talking about, not just going to the sessions because it's the job you're in, right? That's the job I'm in. That's what I'm here to do. No, go to the sessions of the job that you want to do, right? The job that you might be looking for, or something that's going to help you. And that could be used in the exhibit hall, right? So I'm going to always go to see the playground vendor because I operate our playground system, but I'm not going to go and see the spray park vendor or whatever, that type of thing. So I think that, to the point of there, I love that concept of the DEAI from the perspective of, yes, it seems like everything that's thrown to us is what we want or based on our particular interests and not necessarily what else is out there or what we can be looking for.
That's our default, right?
Yes.
And you almost have to toggle, when you sign up for something like, I don't know, you sign up for the New York Times and they say, okay, you seem interested in sports, but we also have politics and editorial and cartoons. It's almost as if you would, somewhere in the AI function, you'd either have to toggle some of those things on, or whoever's writing the AI code just doesn't allow you to toggle them off. And okay, we can see you love steak and eggs, but hey, there's a salad, and all the steak eaters eat this salad. It's called a house salad. Try it. Or, you know what I mean? It's got to still look out for your best interests, not for ease or comfort or taste, but for growth, for width, for a holistic view of you. And I think that's the thing that AI is going to have to hit on the head.
In your case, Shane, they may say that people that like the Spurs also like the salad. And if AI knows you, it's going to know what you're going to do.
Or a counselor, or this is where they cry when they watch Tottenham. Like they use this Snuggie blanket, and so that's what we all buy. Yeah, absolutely. I think AI can't just make my life easier, because man, what a great invention for that. But me getting easier is me walking less, me drinking more Monsters, nothing about that's going to make me want to live a long time, right? It's just what's easiest in the moment is usually the thing that isn't great for your long-term health or whatever. Same thing for your diversity health, and same thing for you as a human being. I think the things we always see with our parents that we worry about is that they rabbit hole into one group or a friendship area or political party or whatever, and they don't ever have the desire to continue to curate an experience that is really broad and diverse. AI now bears the burden of that, not us. Very interesting.
Yeah, and I'd be curious from your standpoint, and I guess for us as well, as we're looking at hiring people, and there's so much bias in AI hiring,
Mhm.
right? And I'm curious if, I don't know if you're already using AI tools to hire or weed out people at a first pass. And if yes, what's that experience like? And if no, what do you all think about it?
We're not. But I think it's just like what we've been having these conversations with you and with Ryan. I feel a little behind, right? And I don't know, Jay, you and I talked a little bit about this before, but this conversation right now, the possibilities seem endless. So, I don't know how that would work right now, but it's certainly something that I could resonate from our last experience of hiring too. I believe it may have been something that would have potentially helped the process, but I'd love to hear what Shane, Jay, have you looked at it, thought about it?
We're not using it from an HR perspective. I mean, I can tell you right now, we're not using it in any really work perspective. I think there's still and this is maybe just my opinion, but there's still a fear out there or a lack of knowledge just in general. Like everyone's heard of AI, everyone's heard of Chat GP, but it's there's still a lot of people that just don't know anything about it. And I was one of them up until a few months ago. I didn't really take the time to do some homework on it just because I kept seeing it pop up. And I'm like, you know what, let's do this and let's try it in a different thing. And then it's funny because I was on my phone about 2 weeks ago and I was posting something on eBay. And there's a section in eBay that asks you to put a description. And eBay now has this new tool that can AI the description for you. And I just clicked on it. I'm like, yeah, I'll try that. And I will tell you, it spit out 100 times better than what I was going to write for a description.
Dickhead.
So I think the more apps or organizations that you're tied to that might implement it a little bit here and there, the more comfortable people are going to start getting because they're going to start understanding what it can do for you. But I'll be totally honest that 6 months ago when it started hitting, or maybe a year ago, I was like, I'm not interested in that. I don't want things to take over from a technology standpoint. I'm too old school of handwritten notes and handwritten paper and all that stuff. It's just but we're coming to an age where you got to accept it.
Look at the progress. This is the guy who refused to get into esports for years.
Look at that.
I'm so proud of you, Jay.
And I just just because you brought up esports, I was in an esports meeting on Friday, and we're actually implementing 4 new tech labs, all regards to esports. So there's another thing we can talk about on the side, but it's come a long way. Yes, I will fully admit 8 years ago, maybe 9, I don't even know how long ago it was, I was not a big fan of esports, but I've opened up my eyes, we'll put it that way.
He's still holding on to that MWR haircut though, isn't he? That's tracking for sure. I have always thought, even in interview process, it's input output specifically, right? I think I've told y'all this. I believe wholeheartedly you get the person you're interviewing for. Yeah. And if you didn't like the person you got, you need to go back and look at the questions. Because if the questions ask, tell me about your time in the industry and you have experience doing cash handling, and if they're basic entry-level questions where you're trying to separate by experience or age, you're going to look up and get someone that maybe isn't a younger professional, that if you haven't asked questions about innovation, they haven't had the opportunity to tell you about innovation. And then you look up and 6 months from now, you're like, man, this person's just a baseline or maybe even below baseline park and rec professional without any innovation, without any drive, without any ambition. Well, hell, you never asked them about it. Yeah. Not once in the interview process did you ask anything about that. And so that may be the one area where I'm excited about AI, because if you can input, output exactly what you're looking for from someone, they probably are going to have better ways to ask than I do for those questions, because they're able to span the history or the database of all these interview questions that are based off ambition and drive or whatever to maybe seek and find that person. I think our problem in the public sector is that we are, and it's not a problem, but we're regulated by some sort of HR department when, I think Neelay can roll with ZipRecruiter or some sort of LinkedIn AI or Spark Hire or something else, and it can use AI in a way that we could also use it, but there's still going to be a filter that we have to run it through, which is a group of human beings that in general are probably a super, they might be a conservative group of people that are making sure 3 or 4 boxes are checked for every hire. And that may limit you in who you're able to pick,
I wonder too. I mean, I'm not going to be a fan anytime soon of AI and hiring yet or weeding out because of that bias that we talked about. This is something, Jay, I know we've had conversation within our groups as well with all four of us of experience versus academia, right? And
Yep.
what the resume piece looks like. And I'm seeing more and more of that today with LinkedIn can make anybody look really good. An initial conversation or two can be great and you might have credentials on paper. But one, do your values align? Two, do you actually have the skills? And can you produce stuff or can you learn as things are changing? And that's the stuff AI can't predict for you,
No.
right? That's the human element that the grit, the willingness to learn, all the rest is going to be key.
So I've got one. AI makes me think a lot about, next practices. And obviously that is the theme of your pursuit as a consulting agency, right? And so what are a couple of those next practices in the private sector that you think we should be looking at? And what are a couple of those next practice agencies in the public sector that we in the industry should be gleaning as much information off of as we can, or people?
So I think in the private sector, as I building on this piece as well, right? Because I'm particularly passionate about culture, right? AI, automation, this distance, all the rest, remote work is going to come at the expense of culture. And if you don't have culture, none of the strategies are ever going to matter, right? You can have the best plans, but if the people aren't bought in. So that's the piece that, as I look at the private sector in general, this focus on the culture and where we can continue building that purpose, that impact, and the meaning element versus simply the technology becoming a replacement for human behavior in general. And I think that's what the private sector definitely does better in that space than otherwise, right? Just with the willingness to fail. So if I were to push our agencies to do more and more, it would be to be willing to fail more than just, trying not to screw something up and being stuck to status quo. I think as agencies, it's hard. So many agencies, you all do such great things. To your point as well, Shane, I learned a lot from the Pflugerville, the impact and the outreach that you did as well. The think tank, your moving van and what you had as well. You had the videos and stuff for people promoting it and etc. Obviously, Mecklenburg County does so many great things. There's a reason you're a gold medal agency. And Tom, even within the limitations of the size and the budget, you've been pushing and trying for new things as well. So I think ultimately learn from everyone, whether it's people or it's agencies, the comfort is in finding those that are like us. And I challenge every one of us, and you all have a platform and you're doing a pretty good job of that, is to keep elevating just different voices or agencies than who you have. Whether it's you as a speaker, getting a co-speaker or a panelist, whether it's people you're bringing on here, you're hiring, you're mentoring, seek mentors that are different from you and find mentees that are different from you, gender, race, ethnicity, backgrounds, all the rest.
I love that, Neelay. And this conversation has been amazing. We just talked about how we could probably get this going, and I could probably miss the Tom Brady ceremony. So I don't want to take up too much more of your time because I know everybody here's.
I want to filibuster for the next 4 hours, man.
All right, so let's do it. I just want to close with something that really relates to where you're at, what you're doing now too, so that you can kind of give us a little glimpse of the things that you're doing. You have such great insight and what we've talked about today. I think this is going to be easily one of the most popular episodes too, right? Just great content. And that goes back to a lot of what you do. Ever since I've known you, it's been inclusion. So including everybody, making people feel very welcomed and that they're really a part of the conversation. You've used innovation. We talked so much about some innovative practices and creating that culture to ultimately create an experience that someone's going to always remember. Those 3 bullet points.
Did you just write that, or did AI write that for you? That was pretty good.
That was me, all me. But I'm sure they could have actually done better. Either way, all 3 of those, you have used that to inspire me, inspire others. And now through Next Practice Partners, you get to do that as it's your work. That's something that your life's work is now doing all of that for the new the new venture. So tell us, or tell our listeners, about a couple things you're really excited about that you're doing at Next Practices.
I don't want to sound like a sales, plugging
No,
stuff.
I get it.
Right. So that's never been the intent. The idea has generally been both on the planning and the training culture side of innovation and inclusion staying together, right? The DEAI. One of the things we're working on is with the state of Indiana on a 25-year sports strategy for the entire state, right? And that's particularly impactful because it also brings in Indy Parks and Rec. We look at grassroots, the Indiana Sports Corp, and so on. So that's going to be really meaningful for us to see how women's sports, inclusive and adaptive sports, technology within sports, all the rest can shape how we do things as a future. And probably the other couple of pieces are just as we are working with agencies, is building in a greater focus on inclusion. We just did a meeting in Mountain View for a master plan, and we had English, Spanish, Russian, and Mandarin all happening at the same time. We did a meeting in San Bernardino. It was English, Spanish, and sign language at the same time, right? And that's dear to me particularly, is ensuring every voice gets heard, not just every English-speaking voice gets heard.
Like I said, innovation, inclusion, and just creating these experiences. You pretty much you summed it up yourself with that, and we're excited to see what you have to come. I always look to you for guidance, and I think that people who listen to this episode are going to get a lot out of it. Make sure to get to Neelay sessions early. I'm going to say it again. It's the last time. It's your last warning. Guys, do you have anything else for Neelay before we let him go?
I just want to say he's been rocking a faux hawk. The listeners won't get to see this glorious faux hawk that he's been rocking. And happy birthday, Tom. 40 yesterday, right?
That was just a surprise party. The actual birthday's in a couple days, but thank you.
I was going to say it's not there yet, but
Okay.
yes.
No.
Almost.
We're not there yet. But yes, you're the first to officially wish me a happy birthday, I guess. Everybody, I guess the people did too at the surprise party, but yeah, it's coming. Feel a little I guess I feel a little older every day, but hearing the number.
Feeling that age.
Yeah.
In a couple of years, you're going to look like Jay looks right now as well. So, hey, enjoy the 30s while you can.
That's right. G.I. Jane.
Man,
Maybe you have some more gray like I do.
Oh, man.
Oh, Neelay, this was a blast, man. Thank you so much for joining us, and go enjoy the rest of the Colts game. You know the score?
I've been following along. We're losing, so I stopped watching. It's 14. It's
Well, maybe if you watch the second half, it'll turn it around.
we'll see.
Thanks, buddy. Had a lot of fun.
Guys. Keep up the great work, man. Cheers.
Thank you.
Bye.
Thanks, Neelay.
Oh gosh, I think I knew it was going to be a home run, and we say this a lot, but gosh, we could have went so much longer with that conversation.
Yeah. Well, it is funny because I literally was texting him last week about a date and time for doing this in person in Dallas. So you guys can no longer say that I have not invited everyone, just like you guys have invited him, like you did with Biedenstein.
Biedenstein's still crushed to hear that you're not his favorite. He's not your favorite. Yeah.
Yeah.
That was really great, wasn't it? And
Great.
what's funny
Yeah.
is there's so much we didn't talk to him about that we could have. But man, that AI stuff, I love hearing how other people would use it, because it's such an untapped area, and Ryan's got practical experience, but and he's been exposed to a lot. But I think Neelay is probably seeing how it's being done in a lot of different ways that Ryan hadn't thought of. Right? Ryan holistically thinks of things in its impact to Parks and Rec. I think Neelay sees a different view on a lot of stuff, including AI. So very interesting.
Yeah. And when I think when I originally talked to Neelay about this too, I didn't expect this to go in the direction of AI. I know that's what the premise of our show, right? It's this organic conversation, and we get into some really great topics. It's just, I feel that there's going to be so much more. A lot of our episodes are probably going to touch a little bit on this AI concept. And just there, we talked about with Ryan, like you said, Shane, some practical, some data usage with AI, and there with Neelay, we talked about more or less the user experience and just the concept of thinking about how you can get outside of your comfort zone. Right now, I'm thinking of AI as the way we do it. It's Amazon tells you what you like, and what, Google tells you what you like, or whatever it is. But to put in perspective that think about the health benefits. Not to go too far onto this, but Shane, you eat steak a lot,
Right.
and that list or whatever it is, that shopping list, Shane, you should try a salad.
Yeah.
Like, and I'm being serious too. Like, right?
Honestly,
a
the
doctor
doctor's
would tell
office.
you that.
Yeah, the doctor's office should have my list. I think I mean, we talk about Ryan, and also want the listeners to know this was podcast release week. So we've all kind of experienced, first of all, I think I can speak for all three of us. If you're thinking about doing a podcast, don't do it. Holy crap. A lot more work and bullshit behind the scenes than we thought there would be. But, when we're talking about Ryan and AI and the release of our podcast, all three, Ryan sent all three of us a LinkedIn message that he inputted. I don't even know how he did it. Like, I don't know, did he use fairies? Were there some sort of magic pixel dust? Because he inputted through AI our actual podcast.
Conversation, just the recording.
Yep.
And it, so if you've ever clicked on a YouTube video and it shows a summary, like, oh, that's 15-minute mark, they talk about Jay's hair, and at the 20-minute mark, they talk about whatever. It did that for us. It broke everything up into subjects, like chapters in our conversation. And man, I mean, we haven't done that yet because Hannah is the only person that probably knows how to do it, or Tom maybe on the back end has some access to it, and we haven't wanted to do that. And those are the types of things where you're not worried about AI making you a better person or diversity. It's just point and click. That thing makes your life better. It saves you time. And I think that's the appeal of AI. I think the worry of it is that they can get away from us, right?
All right.
Great conversation, man.
That was awesome. We will wait until our next one. For everybody out there, I'm Tom Venniro alongside Shane Mize and Jay Tryon. Thank you so much for joining us on another episode of RecLess.
Great guest, man. Good job. See y'all.
Yes, awesome. Take care, guys.
See you guys.